Thank you for being here tonight. The Customer Obsession Playbook has been an event that we've actually moved a few times. So we've been quite excited about finally being able to bring it to you all. Some of you might have joined earlier as we've held a webinar featuring one of our speakers tonight as well. We received a lot of good feedback. Apparently there's a lot of questions about what customers want. So tonight we'll be opening up for that again with more speakers on the topic. And we're very excited for that. For those who do not know me, my name is Alex. I am one of the members of the Bangkok Startup Association. Alongside me, I have several other team members here tonight. Maybe they can put a hand in the air so we can see where we are. So as you see, you can identify them with the blue white t-shirt with the blue brand, and it's in the wash. These are all people who have made this possible. And I'd like to, just before I jump into who I am and what we're going to be talking about, Billy, who is our head of the organization, I hope you could just share a little bit about who we are, what we're doing here, and what's next?
Lovely, thank you. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Billy and I'm the first president of Bangkok Startup Association. And the key thing that I would like to stress is that we are a non-profit. We really do this for the community. We want the startups and the entrepreneurs to succeed. And that makes our mission to unite and uplift the startup ecosystem in Thailand, because we realized it is scattered all around. Investors are saying, oh, there are no local startups to invest in. Local startups are saying, there are no local investors. And we realized we just need to bring these people together, and that's the uniting part of our mission. And the second part is uplifting. And for uplifting, we have formidable speakers like Tim, Panda, and Thor for you tonight, as well as all the other initiatives that we're doing. Now, what is ahead for us? We are doing 24 events within this year. Secondly, we built a large partnership network made possible by Vincent. We partnered with over 700 big tech companies, from Google to Amazon to HubSpot, to all provide beautiful discounts to our startups. And we are packaging that in our membership program that's coming next month. And without further ado, let's move on to the event. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Billy. So as you can see, many more events in the making, and this is definitely one of the ones I've been looking very much forward to, because tonight, ladies and gentlemen, you are standing on historic ground. Who in here has been at the FCCT before? Show of hands. Okay, got a few. That's amazing. So the FCCT, the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand, is considered the oldest press club in Southeast Asia. It was founded just about 70 years ago. And a lot of important people have said a lot of important things here. So if you go back in history, if you look at the banner around the bar as well, this was a magazine they used to have back in the days, but you'll see everybody from Thaksin to several other heads of state who's been here sharing plans for the future. And I was speaking with a few of the people from the FCCT about, this is amazing that a startup organization can come here and do something. And a big thanks, first of all, to Michael, who's sitting over there, for opening the door. Thanks, Michael. A little quick applause for him. Along with Kunmi, who's in the bar running a fantastic team. Kunmi, up. Thank you. And also Phil, who's not here tonight, but he's in with us in thought, he's the president, correct, of the board member of the club. Yeah. I asked Michael earlier, what does journalists and founders have in common? Because it's a fun mix, right? And you had a good answer. You said, well, inconsistent paychecks. And diving into that thought, right, what I think as well what we have in common, besides the struggle and the hustle, is that you have to be in the front line of what's happening. If you are a founder in the 21st century, you need to be in the front line of what's happening. Because if you start missing out, that's going to be seen on your balance sheet, it's going to be seen in your customers, it's going to be seen all across your startup. You can't afford to fall behind. And that's what we're trying to do tonight on a very specific topic, customer obsession. And what does that mean? Well, that's for us to unpack. In the next hour or so, we'll unpack a number of different topics, along with some very, very exciting speakers. And a few things about me and why I matter in this. Well, I'm an investor, I'm a supporter of many startups. I'm quite interested in seeing if my founders, if my community are really sure of what their customers want. So it's a question that I daily sit with, not as close to the product as I'd like, but close enough. So I'd like to just get a feel of the room. Who in here, a show of hands, who in here are currently building a service or product? Okay, a little more than 40% or so. Okay, who in here is investing in service and products? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay. So for the ones building service and products, who in here have high confidence in what your customer wants? You have a product that can scale. You're pretty sure that this is something that works. Show of hands, who in here has high confidence? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. All right, who in here is moderate? You know, we have somewhat product market fit. We have MVP, yeah, all right, moderate. All right, a little more. Who in here is in the early stage? We're not really sure. We're experimenting. We're throwing things against the wall. We're seeing what fits. All right, a few more. All right, okay. I have one promise for you tonight then. I want to move you closer to high certainty, and if you're in high certainty, I'm going to inspire you. With the help of our speakers tonight, I'm going to inspire you how to stay ahead of the curve. So even if you're sure of what your customer wants, you're going to be thinking a little broader about, okay, maybe I can dive a little deeper. But I can't do that. So I need to invite our fantastic speakers to the stage. And I'd like to start with Panda. Hello, Panda. Please give Panda a hand. Panda is the founder of Floc. Floc empowers freelancers to thrive. We help create better synergy between companies and freelancers so more talent can grow and more businesses can grow as well. Before that, you were with Capricorn, correct? Yes. Innovation product manager? Yes. On the front line of building new tech and things that work. And
it was an ICO portal.
Yeah, okay. Cool. Well, please take a seat. And is there something you would like to add to your journey so far, a few minutes, and who you are?
Well, so to briefly introduce myself, my name is Panda, like a bear, and I'm currently building Floc. It's been a few years now. So what is Floc? We are an advertising and marketing freelancers platform that focus currently only for freelancers in Thailand. So I would say that's about it for now, and more about me. I like to think that my professional path is in the conjunction of design, of product and marketing. And with the backgrounds, currently building Floc is just something that I'm trying to do, not only to make my living and get rich out of it, but it's always been my passion because I've been freelancing my whole high schools and universities life. And it's always been my passion to keep doing this design work. And now that I'm no longer doing it, what I'm trying to do is making sure that the freelancers can thrive with less blockers with Floc in the market. So that's about it.
Thank you. Quick hand for Panda. Thank you so much, Panda. So a real founder in the trenches, working hard. That's amazing. Next one up is also a real founder, Tim. Please join us on the stage, sir. Now, Tim is also a serial founder, currently working on a very exciting deep tech product, but comes from a whole range of different exits. To just mention a few, Stinson Design did presentation design, exited. Candy, Banner, an ads company, also exited. And most recent, TendoPay, a Philippine fintech company, also recently exited. Also a podcast host on the next big wave. So if you want to stay ahead of the wave, you can listen to that. Did I miss anything, Tim?
All the failures in between, all over the place as well. No, I have been all over the map, and maybe out of curiosity, just maybe out of opportunity, just chasing what customers wanted in different directions. Right now I'm working on something completely different. You mentioned deep tech, so I'm working on software for infrastructure, which I'm not going to bore you with, but if you've never heard of Kubernetes, the technology that I'm working on, it's basically taking over running most of the tech companies and data-heavy companies like banks, insurances, etc. So that's what I'm doing now.
You can keep that one.
All right.
Hello. Yeah. The good thing about being in a press club is that you have more microphones than anything here. Also, very cool, we're being recorded, by the way, everybody. So if you want to wave to the cameras, you'll be seeing this later on. Last to a panel. Tor, would you please join us at stage? Now, Tor has a very interesting profile as well. You find him as an advisable to startups building something big and companies that are already big. So you find an individual here who has basically been at every single stage when it comes to product, innovation, management. Originally from Norway, now in Thailand, works between these two countries, also an investor, and just a really good thinker as well. Tor, anything to add? You can take that one.
No, I think you've summed up pretty nicely. I would say that this specific topic has been a big passion of mine ever since I started this innovation journey 10 years ago, and I still try to keep learning to understand what this actually means. So it's very nice to be here. Thank you.
So that's our panel, ladies and gentlemen, for tonight. Yeah, you can give them a hand. The format that we've made for you tonight is that we'll just go through a bit of a fireside chat, including a few different topics that can open up a discussion between the panel members, and hopefully not any feedback, well, from the microphones here. In the end, we'll invite you to have questions. So if you come up with questions, if there's something burning, we can also make space for it, but please, we have thought of you. There's space for questions afterwards. And of course, we got the club here till 10 o'clock, so let's grab a beer afterwards and continue the conversation. This is all for all of us. But it's always good to start any kind of discussion with a definition. And I asked our panelists to prepare their definition of customer obsession. What does it mean to be customer obsessed? And yeah, I think we should start there, ladies and gentlemen, just to kind of get an idea of the benchmark of tonight's topic. And Tor, would you start?
Sure. So my definition, as of now at least, is that every decision we make is to make sure that we're providing customer value first. So in any company, there's so many stakeholders that we need to take care of, but at the end of the day, we're always thinking about what's the best for the customer. So that's customer obsession for me. It also means that we're spending more time on customers than any other stakeholder as an organization, and kind of having that thinking that if you provide enough customer value, you can generate business value, you can generate employee value and all the other values, investor value, etc. Yeah.
Thank you, Tor.
Yeah, I mostly agree. At the end of the day, the way I look at customer obsession is I want my product or service or whatever I'm building to be an experience for my customers where they start at one place with different pain points, and when they come out of experiencing my product, these pain points have been solved, and hopefully proactively as well. So I'm not just waiting around and trying to figure out pain points today. I'm trying to figure out that their state of mind and their situation in the future so that these pain points are solved for them in anticipation.
Thank you.
And of course, definitely agree with you too. I think the concept customer obsession has already been very widespread and widely adopted. And to me, at least, I don't personally believe in customer obsession. Having customer as a central of your thinking is very crucial. But from the way I see it, we use customer obsession as a tool to solve business problem, but it's not a definite solution. So sometimes this is a way to go. A lot of other times this is not.
I like that last part actually. What is the business problem you're trying to solve? You all saw that the room today consists of a mixture of founders, some investors, but founders mostly centered around MVP. They have found something that works, and we also have a few founders in the scale process. They have, they have a dream about getting bigger. I know from our last webinar, Tim, we talked a lot about the switch you have from when and how you listen to customers. I don't want to forget either that we have some that are building their initial product and trying to find market fit. Maybe we can just explore a little based on these 3 points you shared here. So the aspect of understanding customer value, the definition of what a pain point is, and then I think what Panda kind of pushes on here, which is fun, which is what business problem we're trying to solve. So it's 3 various different points, right? What I get on from value, what pain you're helping me on, and then what kind of business problem is actually being solved. Does that vary a lot between the different stages of growth from the company?
Yes, it does. I'll start, I guess. But before we talked about the different stages of customer needs and customer obsession, one thing that Panda said is like the customer's feedback and opinion is not necessarily everything, and I completely agree with that, because as much as I'm very customer obsessed, you have to realize that your customers don't always know what they don't know and what they need. And to quote Henry Ford, you know, if we had asked what our customers wanted, they would have said faster horses. And so the customer doesn't always know what they need. That's one thing I just wanted to remind people of. But I'll leave the floor about the evolution of customer needs over time, perhaps.
I think for me personally, you know, not listening to customers or taking everything they say for granted is important, right? Because let's say you have a product that has 1,000 customers, right? And you ask each of these customers what's missing. And each customer can have their own opinion about what's missing. So in a scenario where each customer says a different thing that's missing, that means 1,000 new solutions that you need to put into this product. Right? And if you embed all of that into a product, the product is going to be horrible, right? So every customer only thinks about themselves and how they use the product, you know, and that's fine, right? But using your own judgment and looking at patterns between customers is where you have to go, right? Because you also need to protect all the other customers from the customer, right? And I think that's been a big learning for me, especially when you're starting off in the early stages of a product, that you're listening to customers and you're seeing all these crazy and cool ideas that you want to implement, but all of a sudden you're standing there with a product that doesn't make any sense for anyone, right? So I think my kind of philosophy has always been build a great screwdriver, not a bad Swiss Army knife. And you end up building very bad Swiss Army knives if you don't have the right intention and understanding of what actually makes this great. So yeah, but still, customer value is the most important thing in my opinion. Yeah.
Anything to add to that, Panda?
What was the question again?
The question was, how do we differentiate between listening to our customer in the different stages of growth? Whether you have a MVP, we have product market fit, or you are getting ready to scale.
I think that's a very hard question to answer because there's still so many factors, right? But if we were to think about customer obsession, and you mentioned pain point, what I say is this: we use customer obsession to find the pain of our prospect customers. And then we reuse it again to find then how do we generate values that solve that pain point. And lastly is how do we capture that values that we have generated to them. And I think it's always these three questions in a cycle, regardless the business stage. You do this at the very initial conception. I wasted my 6 months doing the first part, like getting the pain point, and I wasted another like half year trying to find like the solution. And now I'm still spending my time like finding how do I better capture the values that we have already provided. And I believe I might be wrong, but I think it's this constant cycle that we would have to go through over and over again, no matter what stages.
You want to add to that?
Yes, I wanted to react to something Tor mentioned and react positively in that sense. You know, you mentioned building a screwdriver and not a Swiss Army knife, and I completely agree with that. And it kind of stems from the original premise where you said, speaking to 1,000 customers, you'll have 1,000 different ideas of what to build. And I think this is a mistake many people make, is thinking that those 1,000 people are customers. In fact, they're just market research. When you're going to build something, especially early stages, you're going to want to build something that very few people really like and can really benefit from, rather than build something many people might find handy. Then you find your core users, and these are your customers, not the thousands of people that you've interviewed giving you various feedbacks all over the map. So I just wanted to add that.
And there's one thing I also want to add on that, depending on the stage, their customers are also very different, right? So there are this customer adoption cycle that's really important to understand what actually customers intend to get out of using a product. So we have people that wants to be first, right? So they love risk, meaning that it doesn't really matter that it's already proven that this product works, because they have a fear of missing out. And once they use this product, that gives them value, knowing that they will be first, right? And that's, the core users or the visionary people that, really see this opportunity, that are more similar to the CEO than all the other customers coming later at stage. So I think understanding that the customers that you're getting at various stages have different needs and expectations to your product that you need to cater for, right? So the best example, I think, is especially in B2B, where I see a lot of startups trying to get into enterprise very early, right? And that's very hard, because enterprise customers have a procurement process, and they have standards that most startups probably spend years to actually reach, right? With SOC 2 or whatever, license or certifications they need. So I think figuring out which customer you need to grow at various stages and what they expect from your product is a very important, tactic to be able to earn, the next stage of growth. So just wanted to add that.
I want to double click on that. What is the model called?
Customer adoption cycle, I think it's called. Yeah.
Is everybody familiar with the customer adoption cycle? Show of hands. Who has heard about this before? Okay. I'd highly recommend you, GPT it or Google it. I guess we say GPT now. Because it illustrates quite beautifully how, if you are existing in a stage with low confidence around your customer, and help me here, right, if I'm saying something wrong, but you exist with a customer identification pattern that's innovator, right? They're willing to test things out. If you found out who they are and they're buying willingly, you move up to growth, and then you move further to maturity. It looks like kind of like a bell curve that evens out. And it will help you understand as well what kind of risk you take up in what stage of your company. Am I somewhat on point on that? Yeah? Yeah. I remember seeing it a few years back, but it illustrates also, if you want to go for big scale, but you haven't identified your initial client prospect yet, then you might not be ready. I want to come a little more into the core user. I've heard all of you mention that. At what point do you become certain that you found your core user in building your product here?
So I think the core user will probably be there from day one, because they are the ones that see most value in it, right? So if you have a new product or a service in the market, people will look at this very differently depending on how big the pain point is, right? And also, again, depending on who they are as people. So the core user is also depending on the vision of the product, right? So most startups will start off by a simple product, right, that serves a very specific purpose, and then they're trying to grow by enabling more products, becoming a platform, etc. So I think growing with the customer and growing with the user is part of the learning, and evolving your vision into something more than just a great screwdriver at the end, depending on how far you want to go. But I think, the early signs will always be that there are people that see a lot of value in your product, and they bet on you, they support you. And then over time, you will see that these core users, unless you're not providing a lot of value to them, then they're going to stick with you. I think the biggest mistake is, adding so much more features or, services that they don't see valuable, that then the core user or the target customer becomes something different. Yeah.
It's funny talking about core users. for my current business, being a SaaS that helps DevOps teams be more efficient in their work, we divide core users and decision makers. And the reason we do that is our core users actually hate us and fear us, because we're here to replace their job. So they're supposed to use our product, but they know, well, if we improve our product, we're removing manual tasks and day-to-day operations from them. So it's very tricky talking about core users and figuring out how to manage their expectations and their ambition to use our product more and more versus, sort of the risks incurred in them using the product more. So in our business, we're really, really focused on understanding the decision makers, their KPIs, and their, need or their willingness to work further with us and to build better relationships versus our core users who ultimately might lose their job if we do ours well. So it's very tricky to navigate. I don't know if it's the same thing with all sorts of companies, but in our world, which is sort of mid-size enterprise level, productizing an operation that was manual before us, it's a very tricky concept. And so I don't really have an answer to you, but I thought it was interesting to point out that the core user is not always someone who loves your product.
I'm not going to let you go, because how did you come to that understanding?
Well, I mean, it was kind of a given. Our product literally automates 70% of the work a DevOps team will handle, especially when it comes to Kubernetes maintenance. So we assumed as much.
Okay.
And when we went into these conversations, we had to seduce the practitioners that were going to use our app ultimately. And the idea was to not make them feel that they would lose this core job, but to make them reframe their schedules or their core tasks into more like product focused operations, etc. So whether it was decision makers understanding that they could reallocate this time to something more core, or the practitioners understanding that their work pipeline was never ending anyway, so we were taking away from this to put them into something more interesting. So it's about managing expectations and making them understand that there's a business case and a use case to our product, not just a big risk of them losing.
Okay.
But it's an underlying sort of fear that we had to manage.
Okay. So and Panda, I'm actually curious because your core, you sounded like you were part of your core users from the beginning, because you were also a freelance almost. Yeah.
Well, so the initial question was, when did we found our core users? And to give you a little bit more of a context, so I spent, I guess, almost a year building Floc, including doing like the customer research and building the platform, blah, blah. And after that, it's been almost 2 years now. And, well, shamelessly speaking, I believe I just knew my core users around last quarter. So with that 6 months that I spent doing like the customer research, trying to understand the industry pain points, wow, so long, 6 months. And I already had this paper and a very clear persona of this is what our personas are called, this is their behaviors, blah, blah, blah. And we are a marketplace, right? So we are two-sided. We have the supplies, which are freelancers, and the demands, which are hirers, whether SMEs or agencies. And after that, we launched and we realized that what we expected were 100% not true. Oh, it was so fancy, the things in paper. And then we tried to understand who our users are, because that was very crucial. We see the numbers, but we don't exactly know who and why are they coming to our platforms. And that was another phase. And the fact that I said that we just knew our core users, and in this sense is the customers who pays us this last quarter, is because before that it was so scattered. The patterns was unclear, and what me and the team had in mind about our ideal customer persona was so the gap of the difference between what we have in mind and the actual result was quite wide. And then we had to, again, do this in-depth customer interviews with the users that are very active with our platform to truly understand the motive behind using Floc and extract that to create, again, another personas that assumably is our core user for now, but it would change again.
I love this because I think this is part of this dance between I'm very certain about where I need to be and then suddenly things change, right? So I'm curious, you said you were sitting down with these customers and you found out what they really want. What does that mean? What does it mean to say I want something and what I really want something from your customer's perspective?
So I have to share the context. So the problem that we had was that there were too little revenue coming in. And so there has to be so that's not exactly the problem, right? That's the symptom of some problem. Too little revenue. What is the actual problem? Because if we don't know, we cannot fix. And so we use this customer obsession as a tool to try to understand why are you not paying us? We've been building this and we think it's great, blah, blah, blah. And what we did was, I think it's a very obvious step. Segment the hirers, the ones that come to the platform are not active, come to the platform are active, come to the platform active and paid. And then we did this very intensive hirers interviews for around a few weeks. And to your questions, I think with Floc and with my team, we operate on this assumption that everybody lies. And yeah, it is true. Every user lies. Customers in the interview session lies. But their action is true. And so what we do is that we tend to observe more on what they actually do, what their actions are, and we listen to what they say. But we have to really read between the lines, who they actually are, why are they saying that, what do they actually want from this interview. Yeah, and so I guess we try to get to the nearest truth possible.
This is a very, very crucial point, right? The idea of I say something, but I do something different, right? And as someone who is very passionate about listening to people's problems, I often hear, their opportunities, whatever it might be as an investor, right? I often hear that they're doing something that is completely opposite of what they're saying they should do. So I'm curious to ask the panel here, what would you advise when it comes to listening versus observing your customer? Like, how is it that you uncover, truth when it comes to your product market fit or your customer value? Or
So hard.
No, I think if customers were true, McDonald's would not exist because no one tells that they're at McDonald's. And all the biggest restaurants in the world are fast food companies, right? But people rarely say that they've been to McDonald's. So I think you have to be very careful in taking everything for granted. I still believe there's a lot of value in customer interviews, and that's because if you actually listen to them, there is something deeper that you can extract if you're asking the right questions in the right way. But I think every human being has a desire to look best, like in the best possible way, right? And if you have that lens as well from a product perspective, you kind of can separate that quickly on by moving deeper into what's the reason you're saying what you're saying, right? Because then it's always harder to follow up an answer than giving the initial answer, right? So I think in a customer interview context, where the value comes is not from the first answer. It's repeatedly going deeper and deeper to understand the true meaning behind the initial answer, and that can be very different. But I think in general, I look way more on observation analytics than listening, because action speaks louder than words, and I think depending on the stage of your company, you will also be much better able to look at patterns if you observe, right? It's very hard to tell how the users are actually using your product if you're not measuring it, right? So then there's a lot of guessing involved. That's obviously not the most efficient way of running a business. So I think early on, yes, you need to understand the users, you need to talk to them to gain empathy and uncover what's really there. You need to go deep. But after a while, you will try to make sure that you're actually measuring the use, right? And what they're saying about what's not working. And I think that's my last point here, is that customers are not really good product designers, but they're really good at telling what's wrong, right? So if you listen to customers with the focus on purely the problems that they're observing or having with your platform or product, then there's value there. But if you're trying to get a lot of feature requests or improvements from the customer, again, you're gonna fail because it's not their job. So yeah. That's how I would look at it.
You have something to add, Tim? Yeah.
Minor details.
Yeah.
I mostly agree with everything. I would say that I do customer interviews non-stop, not because I feel like I'm going to get some insights on the current problems. All the data is commoditized already, so you can figure out all the business problems, all the people problems, by just sort of scavenging the web or reading reports, etc. The reason I do these calls is, like I said earlier, I want to be able to anticipate where the problems will be, where the pain points will happen to sort of evolve, and that you're almost kind of like a psychologist or a psychiatrist or whatever. You have to kind of get in the customers or the user's head and understand, where they're headed, and that's the value of these calls to me, because as you said, when it comes to improving the product, all this UX UI stuff, you can install very in-depth analytics tools to your app, whether it's post-hog or any of those tools. Sort of, you can literally monitor every session, and if you want to obsess over it, you can track your users' behavior, their eye tracking, etc. So that's also commoditized, and it's very handy, but like those calls are very, very important to sort of project yourself towards where your customers will be and what they'll need in the future, and that's why I do them. And I recommend as a founder that you talk to everyone on your app, whether they're using it actively or not, because that'll be super handy information down the road.
This is a quite interesting. I sense a little bit of a divide between the aspect of the risk that falls in the customer is not a product designer, so if you listen to all the features, you'll just have a ton of features but no working app or system, right? But at the same time, you won't get closer to truth if you're not designing some of these interviews and looking for deeper value. I mean, I hear data being thrown into this a lot, right? And data is a wonderful word. I can imagine in the various different industries that you're collecting data, but is there a strategy to what data is good, what data is bad? Like, how do you can trace everything from how I look to when I'm off the app, and what is it that you consider valuable data when it comes to finding out true value?
Very quickly, you run experiments, so you have to design experiments, and you have to identify what data will support those different hypotheses within your experiment and measure that data, because it's super easy to get lost in mountains of data. You can now leverage AI to come up with these experiments. You can leverage AI to analyze your data sets, etc. So like the data itself can be processed very easily, but you have to come up with the experiments and make sure you only focus on the data that validates or disproves certain experiments. That's my opinion.
Super nice. Yeah. You want to add to that too?
Yeah, I want to add one thing on not just the data, but when I look at data, there is certain things with every product that gives you an understanding if it works or not, right? But there's product-specific KPIs or metrics, but in general, every customer of every product wants value quick, right? So there is no user that is trying to prevent value from happening fast, right? So having looked at so many different metrics and KPIs, and I think customer satisfaction score, etc., is important, but when does the customer or user actually get the value that they're expecting from using your product is, something that should really be a core element of your decision making and your design, right? Because there are some things that are general and applicable that should guide you, and there's always going to be industry-specific, product-specific data points that you should take into account. But if there's like two things that I would always try to measure is, the customer experience. Are they actually satisfied with it? If it's, NSAT or CSAT, it doesn't matter. But also time to value, because it really tells how efficient and good your product is. 2 years ago, I worked with Mixpanel, one of the biggest analytics companies in the world, and they said that's the one thing that they would also recommend to any startup. Time to value. How fast does it go from the user initiates using your product to getting the value? Because that's super, super important and also applicable. So getting time to value fast is really, really key. Yeah.
I feel like the microphone tax man every time it walks by. No, that's super interesting. And time to value is something that I'm trying to identify for this product. But what I realized as a sort of hack in between getting to that value and sort of signing in at first, what we decided to do was create a magic or aha moment off the bat. Even though it was not the full value of the product, etc., it was something that was so sort of impactful when they experienced it that they'd want to stick around to see if there are more of these aha moments. And so that's sort of our hack into getting to time to value. But really interesting stuff. I'll look into it more.
Well, just gonna add on what Todd has already mentioned. So in my interpretation, time to value, the concept of that value, I think it's very similar to the North Star metric concept. And so with Floc, the time to value is the metrics that we track as end users have receiving the values already. And if any of the users have check that funnels, it has higher tendency that they will pay or that they will come back to the platform. I think this is very important because as a startup, as a platform, we can't really optimize revenues or monetization through aiming to optimize the revenues, but it has to be through other metrics that are controllable. And with Floc, our values stage of that for the talent it was having job invitation from hirers. If the talent, any talent out of 100 talents, if they receive this job invitation from hirers, there is 80% higher rate that they would return to the platform within another week. And that was very crucial. And so what we did was, so how do we ensure that as many talents on the platform as possible receive this job invitation from hirers? And likewise, we also found this metric for hirers that we had to optimize that would again directly correlated to the revenues.
Wow. So I see a whole workshop here, right? How to optimize revenue, run experiments that focus on time to value, initiated by magical aha moments, right? I mean, I think the flywheel there is pretty clear. This brings to mind that we're dealing with three individuals here who are in various different industries and scale. And I have a question I just want to open up for. Because you've clearly found some competitiveness in how you work and develop your startups and advisory. So what is one thing, one controversial belief that you have about customer obsession?
It's funny because we started, I think Tor mentioned something around those lines earlier. So for me, if you do customer obsession well, the rest of your stakeholders within your company will suffer. And that's been proven by many companies, but namely Amazon, where they really listened to what their customers wanted or didn't know they wanted but needed, including same-day delivery, the cheapest products ever, who would have thought, things like that. And essentially that put so much pressure on their warehouse staff, the delivery people, all of their employees and their vendors, they start crushing their vendors to get tighter margins, etc. So their customers, they got a lot of benefit. They felt heard. Amazon, well, it worked out well for them, but the rest of the stakeholders suffered, and therefore, sometimes building something with customer focus will lead to success, but at what cost, essentially?
I think the paradox of being customer obsessed is that you're going to let down a lot of customers because you're going to say no to a lot of them, right? But it clearly kind of says that, one, customers don't know really what they want, and two, they don't understand the consequences of whatever they're saying, right? So I think having that practice of understanding that it's the same as raising a child, right? If you do everything the child says that they want, you're not going to have a good child, or probably not as good if they understand the barriers, right? And this goes into the product as well. Like if there are no barriers to your product, then for sure it's going to have bad consequences. But it doesn't mean that you're not customer obsessed. It just means that you have to know more about the customer than what they know themselves, right? And I think every great company has been really good at that, right? If it's Amazon, Apple, or anyone, then it's truly getting beyond, the customer's imagination of what they need or how they want it to be. Yeah. So I think that's my point.
So what is a controversial opinion, right? I would say I try to be less and less an advocate or the one who takes action of the customer obsessions over time. And in my opinion, every leader should try to do that. Because at one point, customer obsession definitely starts with the founders, with the leaders, but you could never be the one keep interviewing the customers, seeing this daily stats data and pushing the teams. That's just a lot. And so what I believe is that you build the team, you build the system and the culture that is very, very customer centric, and then you step back. And that's what I'm actually trying to do. I see so many other very successful CEOs, and they would still go to the storefront. They would still from times to times call the customers weekly or daily, and I respect that so much. But to me, that's not my goal. That's not something I would like to try to do. I would like to try to, stay away from the customer as much as possible, and have the culture that run it by itself.
So, wonderful feedback. So, customer obsession will hurt your stakeholders, it will hurt your customers, and it will hurt yourself as a founder. So, there is a fine line, of course, between listening to what you believe is needed and doing what is needed, I think. We're getting close to the end of the panel here, and there's so many more things we could talk about, but I think it's worthwhile just opening up for a topic here that obviously is on everybody's probably phone these days, which is AI. And the reason I think AI is important is because I asked the panel to think about what are some of the some of the best tools you need to kind of move into practice with when it comes to understanding your customers and everything. And AI is, I have a feeling that everyone is working with AI, but just to kind of open this up when it comes to AI giving more features, more products, everybody can vibe code, I can create whatever in no time. Any thoughts to that and the competitiveness or the danger of using it for getting closer to your customer and putting things out there?
Well, I think there's two things that definitely has changed very rapidly with AI. One is time to getting new data. So meaning that you can run a lot more experiments out in reality by quickly generating something that you can test, right? So any team that is trying to build something now needs to have that skill of running very rapid experiments, because that's a huge leverage that AI has helped, right? you can't have, if you're working on software, I think this 2-week sprint cycle, right? That's 13 days without data of how to improve, right? And I think you need to understand that not leveraging AI into your experimentation and understanding of where to go next is going to be a big risk for any company, because it means that your competitors are learning faster than you about what's working, what's not working, and how to get further. So I think that's one key thing. I think the other thing that really has changed with AI, with especially, a lot of people can build a lot of things now, is that taste and brand becomes much more important than what feature you have. So an MVP 3-4 years ago isn't necessarily an MVP today, right? Because the bar has raised in terms of what does the customer actually expect, in terms of the design, in terms of the features that are there, etc. So I think that's an important aspect of that. What worked a couple of years ago doesn't work anymore, right? Because there are solutions out there that are being generated so quickly and so nicely and so good that you just have to make sure that you're still, on top. So yeah, and it's also a very fun tool to use, right?
What's your favorite AI tool these days?
I still think, except that OpenAI is currently having a lot of issues, I still think OpenAI has the best product with ChatGPT. I will never forget the first day I used ChatGPT. I was in my old childhood bedroom, waiting for 3 months on the wait list, and I was shaking. I was like, oh my God, this is happening, right? And I told my parents, and they didn't have any clue what I was talking about. But what I really like about ChatGPT is the simplicity of the product, right? It's super powerful. It's also very easy to use. My mom uses it, right? It's the best proof that you're building something really great. And I think, this general application in a product is immense, right? That very few can compete with. And I also really like how fast they're actually iterating. It's easy when you have $40 billion, but still you need to still need to deploy. Yeah. So
thanks, Tor. Tim?
So on top of what Tor said, for me, where we leverage AI in this whole customer obsession is basically as we create feedback loops between our customers and our product and our teams, we use AI to sort of translate that information for each department. So what might be interesting for product team might not be interesting for sales and marketing, etc. So having the ability to translate that information and make it relevant to each stakeholder is very key for us. So really love that, to be honest. And to answer your question preemptively, my favorite AI tool would be Perplexity. We've been using it as a company for the past 6 months, and Perplexity has its own models, but what I love about it is that it unifies all the different models out there. So you can either pick and choose a model based on the output you're looking for, or let it do its own job and use an agent to figure out which model best adapts to the task that you give it. So Perplexity all the way for me.
Thank you.
So how do I use AI as a person, as a team, to enhance the customer obsession, right? Well, listening to you guys, and it really inspired me and make me feel like, well, I'm too late to the game because I haven't used any, to be honest. Use AI and improve the efficiency of the customer service, of the marketing, of course, but in customer obsession, we haven't. We still look at the dashboard by ourselves. We would still, call and analyze customer interview by ourselves. And what you just mentioned, like having the ChatGPTs or AI help extract the information for each department, I find that very interesting, and we should try doing it. But at the core, would I 100% shift or leverage the customer obsession process to the AI? I would say no, because it's such a human process. And if you don't really understand what customer really want, and if you rely on technology to tell us that to you, oh, imagine the product's so gonna be boring. And because I believe that good insights are from the borderlines, are from anomalies, and well, unless, and of course, you can tell AI to emphasize that for you. But the emotions of really understand the customer's pain, I think that's very crucial. And so, it's always the same answer at the end of the day, which is the balance between being human and using technologies to help you. And yeah, that's it.
I mean, I will completely agree. It's I heard a very good podcast the other day that AI will not make it easier for you to get feedback, give feedback, go through a tough discussion. There are still points in life where you just have to sit down in front of another human being and you can't read from your phone, So the ability for us to be real in the moment, I think, just becomes more valuable. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at almost the end of our panel. First of all, I just want to take the temperature. How's everybody feeling? Okay? Yeah? Anyone feeling optimistic about the future here? Yeah? There's so much to do. I have a ton of notes here, and I'm thinking actually we should probably find a way to communicate this out to our community and a kind of a worksheet, Billy. But we'll talk about that later. I want to open up the Q&As for the next 10 minutes or so. Anyone has questions? Would like to ask the panel openly about anything? This can also be related to things beyond just product or investing in products or with the aspect of customer obsession, of course. Yes. So the way it works is that we have a microphone here in the middle, because it's the only spot we have that apparently covers the wireless microphone. Hi.
Hi, thank you for the great panel. I'm Hannah. We are a startup that produces sustainable textiles from agricultural waste. So if you think we can collaborate somehow, then please come talk to me after this is over. But my question is not really related to the topic today, and I hope that's okay. But given all of your combined expertise in startups, I wanted to know, do you have any frameworks that helps you balance legal risk and sort of like the more nebulous areas with business progress to help startups sort of think about this as they're progressing?
Can I just ask, legal risk in terms of what's allowed to?
Not the easy black and white ones, but sort of the more gray areas. Like how do you know when you should sort of do something when not all of the red tape has been cleared? Does that make sense? Because, I mean, like you could wait for everything to be done in order, but I feel like in that case, then progress would be really slow. So do you have a framework to help startups think about this?
Don't take this as legal advice, but as a founder, when it's gray area, it means go until someone tells you to stop. That's how I would interpret it, and I'm not a lawyer.
I can say that one of the big regrets I have with some of the companies I work with is that they focus too much on the legal and not enough on the action, right? And they get stuck. I mean, setting up a company, depending on where you are, has a certain cost. Maybe you need all kinds of different allowances, and you haven't even checked whether or not your product actually works. So I'd be happy to actually share a few ideas afterwards if you're sticking around. It also depends on where you're doing business, I would say.
Thailand.
But happy to share more advice afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Yes, please. Oh.
Thank you. I want to first start thanking the panel because even though as an old entrepreneur, I learned a lot from you guys. I was speaking to bankers. I'm in banking technology, and actually one of my portfolio companies know your customer, customer obsession, and often it's misunderstood by banker as now your customer is just an anti-money laundering tool rather than knowing your customer for marketing purposes. As we talk about AI, we start wondering, where's the data being kept? customer being your biggest asset, are you concerned about ChatGPT having access to all your data? Of course, this is something that we look at as Know Your Customer, is the custody of your information and who has access to it and who has access to your intellectual property.
I'll go first. Well, I'm not, because, well, I would say I would definitely be concerned if the data is sensitive, if it's personal information, and once that the company gets bigger and bigger. But at this point, if it helps leveraging the process and make things easier, I think the risk and return, it makes sense. And currently, with my context only, I'm all good.
So we're handling sensitive data for sure. And on our end, we're experimenting with two ways to sort of railguard that. On the one hand is self-hosted RAG, and on the other, we synthesize our data, and we're trying to figure out which one has the best results, but definitely a big concern for us.
I think it's like sensitive data should never be exploited. Depending also in the industry, I would definitely consider how important it is, right? If you're in the banking and the finance industry or the legal industry, you have a much bigger risk of actually going bankrupt if data is being leaked, right? So depending, like in general, I will always be skeptical to use third-party tools to use my data, but for a startup founder, I would also really think about the risk return. There is definitely not an easy answer to this, but I think in some industries, like one of the clients that I'm working with, they are in the finance industry. They have much more compliance for a reason than other companies that I've also worked with. So I think like the business risk you have to take into account, right? When you're deciding if you want to go or no go to using these tools. I would also say ChatGPT or OpenAI is still a very new company. So and they've also broken a lot of laws to where they are. So who you trust to have your data is very important, right? But a lot of the AI companies that are coming out now are very new, and they don't have very good compliance internally. That makes this a bigger risk for you as well, right? Compared to Microsoft or the bigger tech companies out there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, if I can follow up, when you talk ChatGPT, I am, in the compliance, but also privacy side of it. And we tend to rely on the big American firm, and we lose the sovereignty of the data. So I think those are some of the opportunity to have, especially when we talk about decentralized finance, and there is no decentralized identity to this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Please. Yeah. Yeah, you can also use mine.
Thank you for all the insights that you guys have been sharing. My question is on the topic specifically, and open for any of you to answer. Can you share some actual practical use cases from your own experience with your companies where you've obsessed with the customer, found insights, and done something about it in the way you run your companies, whether you changed a product or your process or the way of doing things? I'm looking for something practical that you applied.
So many cases actually. I'll start with probably one of the biggest pivot that we did coming from customer obsession. So as I shared earlier, that at one point we had this problem of not having enough revenue from the users, and then we did this intensive hires interview for a few weeks, and our learning was this. First is that the product was overly complicated, and second is that no one actually understood our concept So that's both the product problem and the communication problem. And a little bit more of the context. With Floc being the freelance marketplace, we are not monetizing like Fastwork or Fiverr that takes the take rate from the transaction fees, but we monetize from hirers viewing talent's profile and contact information. It's more similar to pay New York Times to view one article. So that's our underlying concept. And before this, what we did was we create this thing. I thought I was so genius. It's called Floc Coin. Oh, I'm laughing already. And with Floc Coin, hirers would come to the platform, purchase the coin, and then use those coins to unlock one step the profile, another step the contact. And I thought I was a genius, because this could be an underlying infrastructure for other products on the platform, blah, blah, blah. But obviously it was too complicated. And so we pivoted from that. We are still, at the core, we are still the same business model of not taking the take rates, but the contact information fees. But the models is a lot more simplified now. The pricing is a lot easier to understand, and it's been after the pivot, the signals has been a lot more uptrend and a lot more positive. So that's one thing. And what we did wasn't only on the product, the platform actually. We revamped the whole brand identity. Because with Floc, our positioning, we have to have this top talent, top freelancers, and we had them, all the awarded freelancers. But the audience didn't exactly trust us because we didn't dress as who we were, and so we rebranded and re-communicated, used a new key messages, and all of that came from those hirers interview, because before I didn't know what the problem was.
I have a rather unorthodox story about this. This was in my first business, so Alex mentioned Stinson Design. We were a presentation design agency. And you can wonder, like, why would anyone pay money for presentations? Like, you have PowerPoint on your computer, right? And so we made that same mistake. When we started this business, we thought, well, we're going to provide really beautiful design and layout, etc., and we'll charge by the hour. And we were wondering, why are people not, hiring us? We're not that expensive, and we have designs that stand out. And as I started talking to these potential clients more and more, I realized that, designers are a dime a dozen. They could be hiring locally, offshore, etc. They don't care about the design. Like, they don't care if it looks good. What they wanted was an experience, and part of that experience wasn't just the design. It was understanding that their purpose was to feel confident when they were pitching a new product or raising money or launching something. They wanted to feel like someone had supported them through the process of getting their confidence to stand up there. And part of that experience was not just having great design skills, but charging a premium. Because the association with charging a premium is that, well, you're in the best hands possible. And so we pushed that experiment further and further and further, and it turned out that the more we charged with the same output, the more clients we got and the bigger clients we got, and the more comfortable they were with, like, opening up doors to other people in their companies or introducing us. And so our realization was that our product was not our design, was an experience, a premium experience, and a cost that it goes with. So that was a big learning from talking to clients and interacting with them and understanding what their true pain points were, true needs were.
And so did you sort of change your positioning from we make amazing presentations to, and what was that?
Yeah, it was 15 years ago, but something along the lines of, we help you achieve X goal. You know what I mean? So like, we're here to, like, help you through a process, not just give you an output.
A practical example is, number one, learn how to talk to users. And for me, the best learning I had in my early career was doing a lot of customer interviews. I think how our brain works and how a good customer interview should work is very different. Because we typically ask yes or no questions, and we also add our own judgment into the questions we ask. Both of those rules that our brain is wired to do is really bad. So getting into the habit and practice of actually doing good customer interviews, knowing how to ask questions, is one of the key attributes, I think, that just comes with practice, right? So understanding to ask good questions and putting that into practice is very, very key. The second thing I would like to add is just measure one thing, and that is how often do you talk to your customers, and have it publicly in the organization. I think that was one of the best things I did in my early career, because I had a boss that was customer obsessed out of this world, and she always asked the same question on Friday: when did we last talk to our customers, right? So this kind of pushes not just the leader, but it pushes the whole organization to actually go back to who we are for, right? So keeping in mind a sort of a system that keeps track on how often you talk to them, or just engaging with them, and learning how to talk to customers is my 2 practical tips that you can deploy. One learning I had, and it's a bit similar story to Tim, was I was working for a big insurance company, and we interviewed 100 users before building any product, and we still failed. The first reason was that a lot of us hadn't done a lot of good customer interviews before. A lot of us were still very early on. But what I've realized more and more, the more products I developed and also advised on, is that users are exceptionally lazy and they don't want to think. And this is what makes design very important, right? So if you have a product that the users really need to think about, going through from A to B, I can promise you that it's going to drop any type of, any metric on your business. So getting to the point where things are intuitive and simple is, the holy grail of any great product. And that, comes back a bit to taste and really understanding where they want to go. But that's just a general observation that I've had, as most companies that are doing extremely well have really simple products, and simple is not easy. Simple is probably one of the hardest things in the world. So keep that in mind when you're truly trying to become customer obsessed. Yeah,
well said. We can take one or 2 more questions. 2 more questions. All right. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Shreya. I'm an IT service provider. So most of the time I face one issue: how to pitch to a customer so that they'll be happy, and I'm also indirectly get some profit. So how do you pitch to a customer, and how do you just make sure that we gain some profit also from that? How do you pitch it? Just want to learn that.
How do you pitch while making a profit?
Yeah.
Right?
That they'll be happy.
So it's actually funny, because pitching is if you can pitch, you've listened to your customers. Because when you pitch to them, it doesn't feel like they're being sold to. It feels like they're being helped, assisted, heard, and you're providing a solution to their pain point. So a pitch should not actually be a pitch. It should be providing a solution that you charge for.
How do you decide how much we should charge?
Oh,
We are getting
pricing, that's different. Keep increasing your price until people say no.
No, that's true. Let me share a little bit more. So with Floc, we have been increasing our pricing every month. So one product, we started at 3,500 baht, and now we are charging at 15,000 baht, and we are still planning to increase more. And this has been around within 6-month period, because we increase and they still pay, and then we keep increasing. Yeah. Also, no, but that's an example, right? But actually, I think there is an actual way that you can calculate, like how could you charge for this? Let's talk afterward. I can.
Yeah, I will be waiting for that.
You want to say something, Tom?
No, I think it goes back to the point of the more value you create for someone, the more you can extract without feeling bad about it, right? So whatever product you're selling, the value that the customer is percepts that value to be has to be, a good trade-off, right? So I think a lot of founders especially are feeling ashamed of charging, customers, but
They are not sure. Will they say yes or not, or they'll just go away?
the least thing you want to do is a race to the bottom, right? Because then you're only competing against price, right? So getting away from that is number one, and that becomes, finding a unique approach, getting a unique brand, and also a great experience. The reason why, Apple charges premium products is because it's a premium experience and a really good quality, right? So the better quality there is, the more happy the customer is willing to pay for it, right? And the more profit you can make. So I had a great boss, and he said, there's no shame in asking other people for money, especially in business. And that's how everyone makes a living. So, yeah.
I also want to quickly, if it comes to the pitch, we have one of the best speaking coaches in Bangkok here, Thursday. There he sits. Yeah, give him a hand. Yeah. If you need to improve your voice, pitching, he's the right person to speak to. Just heads up. Yes, please, sir.
So firstly, thank you really for that sharing. It was really interesting. Tim, you were saying a couple of times, or you mentioned one thing, that it's like raising a child. You're not giving what the child is asking for, but you're having your values. Tim, you're in the middle, yeah? Then I'm confusing you both. Okay. So you're having your own values and you're guiding basically the customer. I would like to hear from all of you the opinion and the perspective around the core idea, like treating your customers like your children. Like they might not know everything what they want, and you can't give them everything they were asking for, and eventually you make the decisions and guide them, but you're still listening to them. Am I summarizing this? But I would like to hear that from you with your experience.
Well, I guess I started this, so I better continue. No, I think there is some truth in that, right? I think, like, generally speaking, every product that people use is to get someone from a point where they are to a desired other point, right? So when I'm drinking water, I'm thirsty and I don't want to be thirsty, right? So keeping in mind where you want your customer to be, right, is also how you think about your child, right? You want your child to be independent, you want your child to be, smart and happy and all these things. But if everything you do is without any resistance, right, then you also know that that's not the recipe for success. So I would yes, you should also, you should treat customer as a child, maybe, but at least also treat your product as a child, because you really care about, the value that creates. So
treat your product as a child.
Yeah, I think that's, caring for your product also while knowing where your customers are heading is kind of the key. Yeah.
So take this with a grain of salt because I don't have any kids, but I kind of disagree with Tor on this one, particularly because I see my kids as, people that I want to educate and grow in a certain direction and nurture, make better people, because at the end they'll be paying for my retirement. But I see my customers as people who I'm willing to spoil because I want to separate them from their money in exchange for a service that they absolutely need. But I'm going to spoil them as much as possible. I'm not going to say no to them unless it sort of puts us in the wrong path or direction. As an individual customer, if you ask me for something, that doesn't sort of match up with the consensus of my customers, then probably not. But overall, I wouldn't treat them like my children. Like, there's a very specific target in business, is make money. And to get there, you provide a service or you solve a pain point, etc. Whereas raising a kid is more intentional, and this is where you kind of, object to a lot of the things they want to turn them into better human beings.
No, totally agree. And to add on, Chor, I think I do treat product like a child, but not customer though. But the hardest part for me of raising the product and raising this company is that at one point I have to let this child getting criticized. And it's, I can't be this, what do they call? Helicopter parent, right? Of ensuring that your kid is perfect, is gonna be well received feedbacks and all of that. But putting this product into the real world and inviting so many people to come and get to know this person, at least like certain amount of people is gonna disagree with what we are doing, and they're not gonna be enjoying the product. And that's the mental side of it, that when we talk about it, it sounds so natural and it sounds so easy. But at the initial, especially during the MVP, this was something that quite challenging for me.
Thank you.
A final point on that, at least from an investor point of view, I always want to hear how attached you are to your idea, right? And I think if you treat your idea as a child, it says more about you as a parent, right? Can the child take criticism? Can I come up here and say, you know what, I actually don't think you're right. I think you have the wrong assumptions, I think, and how do you react to that? And if you quickly become defensive, that's an issue. Because I need you to be open-minded about this idea. In various stages of your company, can be taken to all kinds of different places. If you can live with the fact that things are going to change dramatically, which I don't think I've ever met a founder who hasn't been through a dramatic change of their life, then I think you're built for it. But if you protect it, if you become a curling parent, you're going to have issues. So I guess that's the family advice for tonight. But thank you for your question.
Howie, did you have a question? You were raising your hand earlier.
We do one more.
Hey guys, thank you so much for giving a really insightful panel discussion. My question is, earlier in your chat, you were talking about the transition between market research, finding a pain point, building a solution, and then having like product market fit. And somewhere in there, you have to decide to charge your customer something. And if it's too premature, the product it's not a solution, and maybe the customer is not willing to pay and you don't get any growth. My question is, when do you know you're ready to charge? Is there a defined moment that you can see?
Are you familiar with Kickstarter?
Yeah.
Yeah. So people are willing to pay for something that doesn't exist. If you're good at selling and if you can sell a vision, people will pay to be in line to get something. So that's kind of like the main answer to your question, meaning if you're building something that really helps or really solves a pain point, you can charge from the get-go. And again, you can even pre-sell if you're good at that. So don't wait to have something built big enough or has enough features, etc. Start charging from the beginning, because that'll be a true testament of whether or not people want what you have.
Okay.
You have another opinion, right?
No, I don't. But I think it depends a bit on what kind of product you sell. But in the beginning of any startup, you're selling a vision, right? That's what you're selling. You're selling it to your employees, you're selling it to the customers, and that's what you have at hand, right? And yes, you can charge people that aligns with that vision, because that's also what they want to see happening, right? And I think there is this kind of a lack of doing that, because it seems weird to charge someone to use a product that doesn't really work, right? But knowing that those people buy the vision, they are not really buying the product, right? Coming back to who these first customers are, right? They want to try something new, right? It's very different from your customer number 1,000, right? So I think, you have to understand that getting the first customer is, number one, a very different customer than the customers down the line, and they expect something different. And also just focusing on getting that first customer is the only, true testament of having something that's valuable, right? But yeah, I would say there is a slight difference between what type of product you sell. Like if it's a physical product that will never change once you've received it, then yes, I think I wanted to test a bit more before I sell it. If it's a software as a service where you're actually not selling a product, you're selling access to something, then I think, I would be more open to do it very early on. So yeah, there is a balance there, but sell early, sell the vision, and that's what you do, right? And never ever think that there's people waiting for a perfect product, because that's not why they're buying the first product. Yeah.
Something but no. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you
to the panel, and thank you everybody. I know we are over time, and you've been very attentive, and I really appreciate your time here with us. Let's give our panel a hand, please. They've been here. If you want to talk to them afterwards, buy them a drink. I'm sure that's a good idea. So thank you so much for your time. We have the club till 10 o'clock, and just a few announcements. On Tuesday we'll have our next webinar, which is on AI and sales. One of our good members, Julian, can you show yourself? Hey, Julian there will be sharing his insights building an AI sales company. So we have more events in the pipeline. Please join it. It's online. It's at 6 o'clock. You can listen to it on the go. And also Alex, run. Alex, you want to say something? Yeah? You can use... yeah, take the mic.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Alex, also, the less handsome Alex.
True.
So just wanted to take a couple seconds to talk about our event upcoming in the next couple of weeks. So, I mean, a lot of us here have been to a few networking events in our time, especially the more corporate-y style ones, that are a little stiff, little boring, business cards, someone's pitching you every 5 seconds. It's not too fun. It's a little awkward. So, we thought, hey, let's completely turn that on its head and build an event where people can come, they can be themselves, they can to people, of similar industries, similar paths of life, and just get to know each other on a personal level without all the corporate, boring business stuff, and just have a bit of fun. So we're having an event. It's at Escape Bar, Rooftop Bar at M Quartier on June 24th at 6:30. Doors open, Simon? Yes? 6:30? Okay. We'll have free flow cocktails, canapes. We'll have a few fun surprises in store. DJ, huh? Oh, there will be beer as well, actually. So if you haven't already bought tickets, please do so. I think you can speak to any of the BSA members here. They'll have the QR code for the event if you want to get your tickets tonight. And come please join us and have some fun.
Thank you. And to the rest of you, thank you again to the FCCT. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Kuntao. Thank you, Kunmi. Thank you. ขอบคุณมากครับ Enjoy your evening. I'll see you at the bar.